Minecraft. A world of infinite possibilities. And then you add mods and get infiniter possibilities. From your kitchen sink packs, which add a lot of mods, to crazier things like GregTech New Horizons, which, add a magnet dwarf matter. What? Eye of Heart? We arrive here instead at our chosen pack. All the mods tend to the sky, where the ultimate goal is to create the ATM star using resources that you generate from the void, I guess. We begin our journey creating our island as you would on any skyblock, a small little patch of grass, dirt, and a singular tree. We continue along, chopping down trees, expanding out the island, and testing to make sure the void mod is installed. Yes, I'm testing. That's all I'm doing. I did not fall off, and I have confirmed the void mod is installed. Great. Now, going into this blind as much as possible, I have played a reasonable amount of these mods before, including Ex Nihilo or Deorum or whatever it is in this particular iteration. So, making crooks, getting the silkworms, making sieves, it's all fairly commonplace for what I'm used to in Skyblock. That certainly does not stop the game from bringing a few surprises along the way, like changing silkworms' drop rates to 1 in 100 for some reason, as I discover soon. Why? Is that supposed to make it harder? 'Cause... You would grow a tree that big, wouldn't you? I do not know exactly when they changed and added the rock collection minigame being hold right click, but I guess it also is just as challenging as 1 in 100 silkworms, so macro it is. We use our extremely difficult to gather string and make some meshes for our sieves in order to gather basic resources. Continuing along in the early game, we grab some compressed gravel, we expand the platform out, having no difficulties whatsoever. Everything went flawlessly. And we finally begin our first real resource gathering through sieves. I've recently seen a collection of videos online of people doing civless runs, which to me is a fantastic concept and maybe something I look into as a challenge run for other Skyblock packs. Maybe there's something there that people haven't discovered. During this video, I will attempt to, at the very least, show you usually the first time that something is gotten and how we got to that point. After that, acquisition will mostly be assumed and passive in the background. That way, there's no need to show 400 different clips of me gathering pebbles or cutting down wood. The usual YouTuber thing. I went mining and come back with 3 chests of diamonds. We claim our first 4 copper ingots and immediately begin to use them on something to further our we made sticks. In order to get the most out of our ores that we've been breaking down from our gravel, we make Integrated Dynamics' Squeezer. I don't particularly know how you insert stone and then jump on it a few times and magically get raw ore out, but it's fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. It all makes sense. I'm not losing my... Nope, everything is okay. Everything is fine. Now that we have some basic resources, I determined it would be a good idea to gather some from both sand and dust as well. Netting us redstone, the other Zycorium gems, bone meal, glowstone, etc., etc. All of these will allow us to get into the other mods more easily, as well as start generating our very first power soon. Being the absolute loot goblin that I am, I decided it would be a good idea to go ahead and start a storage mod as soon as possible. In this particular mod pack, it appears that our main option is applied in logistics, which is good. That's my preferred one, even though I really do not use it to its full potential in this mod pack, as you will see over time. Spaghetti incoming. One thing that's always bothered me about these skyblocks is these oak barrels and their adjacent varieties in other packs. You craft them to make a source block, and then you never use them again. Why? It seems as if they wanted to make the early game faster by giving civs an easy access to various materials, so it then follows to just spawn the island with a source block, instead of adding this meaningless step that adds no benefit. With our first water gathered, we then move on to creating lava, using some crucibles and a bit of fire to melt down cobblestone. Somehow, to quote the Bethesda Bible, it just works. We grab our first lava bucket and then go look through the quest line to, of course, confirm that we grabbed it in the wrong container. Obviously. 1 bucket of lava is not cool enough unless it's made out of clay. My apologies, game. Quickly follow this up by making our first cobble generators, because as much as I like holding down right click on the grass, no, thank you. This is an excellent example of why you should read the quest book or item descriptions. Sometimes things change, and that's okay, as long as you know about it. Staring at my cobble generation and wondering why it wasn't working when, you need blocks now. Of course. Oh no, not the squeeze, not the squeeze. We finally arrive at enough supplies to make our first generator. I immediately throw it down on the ground out of excitement, I guess, before properly placing it next to the lava so that we can get enough power going to fill our quest reward queue. Oh god, it's already back! Using our new materials, we begin our first foray into the industrial age, setting up small automations, making sure things are OSHA compliant, only to immediately then climb up a huge pillar of compressed gravel, ready to break it down with my fully repaired and ready to use Oh, I see. Since I worked so hard for that iron, I decide to upgrade my sieves in order to grab even higher tier resources, including, as you can see, diamonds. Well, one diamond, a single diamond. Using the quest reward from that, we create a superheating element. This will speed up our crucibles from a tiny multiplier to times 60. Once again, another thing that I guess to speed up the early game, but wow, that's a multiplier. After grabbing some steel through Mechanism's infusion mechanic, we run into the most annoying Minecraft mechanic possible. Why? Why do they exist? I do eventually turn off the game rule insomnia because, no. Thankfully around this time we get some beneficial things. The automatic flux hammer, which we are going to use to automate the beginnings of our quote-unquote factory. Followed up shortly by the flux sieve, which will, as the name implies, use flux to sieve. It's like magic. Continuing the tech progression into applied energistics, we grab a charger and an inscriber to start making the components that we use to make our ME system. And here we have a clip that will have no long-term repercussions, I'm sure. That's why I'm stopping to take special note of it, as I'm going to get witch water from mycelium. This is the only important factor about this clip. This begins our very tiny foray into the Create mod, which is used a total of twice during this entire run. For basic stress units, we make the standard water wheel. Ah, great. Better add a shaft. No, that doesn't look right. Let's add a cog. Finishing up the prerequisites, we craft our fan and chunk it down over near our stress units. Yeah, didn't need that cog. This allows us to make a soul campfire, unlocking bulk haunting of sand and other materials. Importantly for us is the sand for soul sand. Using our macro to pushing it through normally, it unlocks nether materials, which we need quartz. Of course, as it unlocks fluix, the last requirement for our ME system. This is also an apt demonstration of the nightmare of an inventory management player that I am, so please give me the AE2. I need it, please. Ah, yes. That's the stuff. Whew, I can be lazy again. What a relief. Astute viewers will realize that I have not covered exactly what it requires to make the ATM star. I would like to showcase the moment where I realized it myself, because for some reason, despite it being the goal of the pack, I didn't look at the star's recipe. I know, I'm certified genius over here. Now that we have a better way to handle items in our ME system, I decided it's time to slowly begin upgrading our sieves and hammers to increase the throughput of our extra ores, as well as set up the world's worst farm, but it does make things, so it works. This gives the capacity to upgrade our sieves and hammers further, giving us more throughput, which I craft mechanism machines to begin handling for me, instead of the squeezer. Listen to that, factory. Well, we must begin expanding our logistics, so I craft up some additional pipes and place them on the worst possible way. Huh, that sounds like a mushroom grew behind me. Cool. Wait, do you notice anything missing? Maybe a terminal containing all of our items that we have no access to now, and no way to rebuild it, because all of our items are in the terminal that we have no access to now? Yeah. I appear to be struggling with object permanence because I continue looking inside the cable and around everywhere to see if I lost it. A little bit of annoying manual sieving and building, and we get our terminal back, thankfully. That brings me to a slight base rework, as the current build is untenable. The new build is also untenable, but that's a spoiler. I opt for a drawer controller as well as some compacting drawers in order to make the automation as smooth and simple as possible. I add a few quality of life crafts to my repertoire and then begin a second production line, this time making dust. Our power needs have increased dramatically, so I take 8 generators and mush them together into one. These mobs annoy me so much that I go to sleep and skip the night on a timed challenge. Getting some speed and energy upgrades to further increase the factory's strength, as well as some obsidian upgrades to make some void upgrades, all the upgrades. Now with some basic gear on our belts, I believe it is time for our first little combat challenge. I was wrong, but it was enough to gain our first Inferium, which is going to be hugely important for a collection of basic resources through mystical agriculture. Truly believe this is the first time somebody's ever failed the Gateway of the Emerald Grove. Like, I'm honestly impressed with myself. Very quickly, we put together the infusion altar, the structure that will allow us to infuse our seeds going through mystical agriculture. We will first begin with a set of Inferium seeds themselves to sustain and upgrade, as well as dirt seeds here to create a less annoying process for gathering dirt. I do believe that this is the optimal way to build a nether portal with drawers on the corners that you have to break by hand. Yes, no one will convince me otherwise. We are actually in the nether to place down a quartz nest, my plan for sustaining quartz, instead of having to manually sift soul sand. While we do get a reasonable amount of quartz from sieves, it is not enough, so I begin a few budding blocks and put them on a growth accelerator in the most efficient manner, trust me. It is at this point that I first look up the recipe for the Almodium nugget, which I prefer Almodium. I realized that it's extremely simple to get, so I set up a quick sand automation line. Adding to our collection of seeds from MA, we get water seeds, which combined with the dirt seeds allow for easier clay automation. I then spend an unbelievable time trying to figure out how to get snow or ice. There were so many simple solutions. So many. I missed them all. Once again, watching back, kind of impressed. After a few convenient trades with the Wandering Trader, I returned to the Nether, jetpack on my back, to gather our crystalline bee as it flew basically into the void. I knew of a mechanic where you could grow small beehives as long as you grew a tree adjacent to flowers. It does in fact work. Surely there were no easier ways to go about this process, right? He definitely won't reveal at a later point that there was a very, very simple and repeatable method to get what he needed, right? Right? I will, return to the bees. In the meantime, we make a crusher, ancient debris, scrap, netherite scrap, throw it together, netherite. Bam! We even get our first ATM nuggets here. To expand production, we move towards fire bricks and the foundry. Naturally, we want to make a couple of taps. I guess that's a couple. Can you sense the disappointment in the old school RuneScape bot? We quickly throw together the foundry, smelt up some netherite scrap, and pour it over some sand in order to get our first geode. I very patiently wait for it to cool off. Very patiently. Being new to this mod entirely, I then do a bit of an experiment to see how it works, and this does confirm to me that it grows like normal amethyst buds do. So, I guess we have a nice source of netherite now. In my time-honored tradition of not paying attention to the actual objectives in front of me, I decide to finally take a look at what I need for vibranium. An intercrafter, as it turns out, as well as a bunch of geode shards. Add those together with some crystalline ingots from extended crafting, and we have ourselves a vibranium. This does mean a collection of nether stars, so wither killing will be a requirement as well, and I discover that you need to just mine an obtainium. That's not as exciting. Having discovered the power of the geode shards, I opt to, instead of bees, just do this because it seems much simpler, as I have yet to determine a way to easily gather bees. One quick ugly setup later and we have some quartz, which we use in a reaction chamber to increase our rate of fluix, allowing us to expand our ME system even more. Wood seeds are next up on the docket, giving us access to all types of logs. I then use them with the extractor to attempt to get resin out, but it doesn't. Even after the run, I'm still not particularly sure what I did wrong here. Maybe it has to be a naturally grown tree, but it doesn't imply that anywhere, so. In other good news, we have arrived at auto-crafting with Applied Energistics. A lovely, lovely quality of life, allowing for much faster expansion, letting the machine do all of this small micro-crafting for me. With the first few patterns out of the way, I began setting up in the basement a processing line of sorts that will remain until the end of the map. It is also the beginning of the spaghetti. We make some fire seeds, as this will allow faster glass production by making sand via these. I suppose in hindsight I probably could have set up a flux hammer for sand, but this helps in other ways too. With the beginnings of auto-crafting out of the way, we move on to farming. I craft up a harvester pylon, decide to try to buy some intro seeds, before expanding recklessly our entire base. Right, I forgot about mobs. Time to frantically run around and fix the problem that I just created. Problem solving! This oopsie does accidentally get us into the first tier of apotheosis, so there was some benefit to my mistakes. Always look for the silver lining. It's very important in life. We begin doing a 9x9 farm. We do a I can't count. We do a 9 by, oh, nope, still wrong. We do a 9 by, okay, yep, alright. We did it! I have inadvertently discovered through other mod playthroughs that the silent gear hose, for whatever reason, never break inside of the pylons, so a simple wood hoe will last forever. I'm sure this isn't actually intended, but it's not like creating a hoe is very difficult anyway, so... After crafting up a few stacks of cables for mechanism, I test one more time to make sure the void mod is still installed. It still is. We use these cables to power all the growth accelerators throughout the farm, which will boost the rates of the mystical agriculture seeds by quite a bit. Discovering that there is a boosted accelerator as well, and that I need ender pearls for it, I craft the Enderman Gateway and build a tiny little dirt roof to protect myself from all of their unwanted advances. This works out pretty well until they start advancing on my roof instead of me. That's okay. Dirt blocks give consent, I guess. Thankfully, this goes better than the Emerald Grove Gateway, and we are able to succeed, grabbing ourselves enough ender pearls to last for a long while. The new growth accelerator is quite a bit faster than the other ones, so, with our chest now full, that does require a bit of sorting in infrastructure. With barrels for all possible outputs, all we have to do is hook this into our IMI system and have access to it from everywhere. The auto-crafting system can now auto-craft parts to auto-craft the auto-crafting system, allowing us to expand very quickly. I make a circuit slicer and add that to the processing line, which makes it process much faster. I take our crystal assembler and place it down in the processing line as well. And all of this has been done by the evening of day 27. I think overall that's a pretty solid start. We have a nice foundation to build upon going forward into the more complex mods. Quickly add a crushing factory as well as our reaction chamber from above to the processing line. Ensure it actually has the water it needs to process. And add a requester to keep a baseline of various materials in stock for us. Using some of the gems that we've gotten as drops from Apotheosis mobs, we smash them down into bits with an anvil. Use that to make a table. Oh, look, we're out of power. Well, let's quickly fix that with some more generators. And let the auto crafting go through. Oh, there we go. At this point in time, I had still not actually organized any of the drops from the sand automation, so I should probably do that. Nether seeds are up next, as they allow for an easy source of both netherrack and nether brick, which are used in quite a few recipes. A small glimpse is beginning to unfurl of the spaghetti that is going on inside of this base. Channel management is for nerds. And if you ever doubt your building capabilities or aesthetic design in Minecraft, look at this. I looked at this and said, yes, I need to record this. This was worthwhile recording. The more and more seeds that we begin to gather means that we need to expand the growth acceleration of the farm. This will help and future-proof our design and also allow us to grow far more Inferium seeds at the same time, something we will need for Insanium later on. I make the directional growth accelerator without even fully knowing what it does. After a brief test, I do in fact determine that it directionally grows things faster. I know, I was shocked too. Expanding the foundry to allow for faster generation of gears, I make some netherite and redstone ones and begin a small automation of both. My first thought for this process was to use annihilation planes from Applied Energistics in order to automate them. It is way too fast. It just sucks everything. Around this time, I also got very tired of running back to the system every time I wanted one tiny little thing, so it is wireless time. The future is here. We have Wi-Fi. We use this time to also gather a player transmitter to charge the jetpack as well as the wireless terminal. Not forgetting to nab an Enderman for cross-dimensional charging. Speedrunning through the creation of all of the jetpack upgrades, I arrive at a diamond one. Fast enough for me, as well as pretty much matches my energy generation. It is a solid upgrade, and I do enjoy the faster movement speed. Veracor jump scare. I decide that I'm going to try a sort of new mod to me, just dire things, making the block breaker as our solution to gears. This is also a reasonable glimpse into how I problem solve throughout both modded Minecraft as well as in my personal life. You just kind of experiment with things. It clearly has a slot for a pickaxe. When you place it down, it faces you. It is a testament to how well designed the mod is, that it is so intuitive that just simply looking at it will give you the answers you need. Adding in a quick vacuum hopper to pick up all the drops. Actually setting up the automation of this was simple enough, a few crafting cards set up from the ME system to supply pickaxes, and the machines will pretty much run on their own. With the unfortunate exception being removing the broken ones. Unlike the pylons, they do not just keep a single no durability pickaxe and use it forever. What a shame. Putting a netherite furnace with factory upgrade down in the basement, and the ever-growing spaghetti, is how these geore shards will be processed into their actual materials. And an unfortunate gigantic waste of time. I needed some squid ink, and I figured, giant tank of water, make some squid. That, isn't unfortunately quite how that worked out, and I do not believe that a singular squid spawned in here. My knowledge of vanilla squid spawning mechanics, granted, is very small, so I probably just did something horribly wrong. This is unfortunately where I discovered that the pickaxes do not last forever, and in fact have to be replaced. In some good news, I do discover that you can simply buy squid spawn eggs from the market. Oh, great. I wonder if there's anything else in here I should probably look through and purchase that may come in handy, maybe some others. Obviously not, because that would imply that I missed something. I quickly used some pipes and NVT data in order to filter out the broken pickaxes, while replacing them with brand new ones via the crafting cards. With all this additional netherite, we use it to make a 64 times generator, mushing together 8 of the 8 ones. This new generator necessitates a power generation area instead of just plopping them down wherever they are, so a quick row of superheating coils and some crucibles, and we are set. Actual proper distribution of channels is begun here, as I then move on to expand the crafting automation area to a full platform with many CPUs with parallels enabled. We pick up some dye seeds to alleviate any problems with those random recipes requiring the 2 red dye and 1 purple dye that's annoying. Before arriving in the nether, we throw down a mob masher in our new constructed cube, a couple of fans with some upgrades to push the mobs around, before realizing that I didn't place that correctly. That's okay, we all make mistakes. Set up a quick hopper and storage system for all the drops that will be incoming, as well as a drawer for the experience. After just a few moments, I realized that my entire cube was constructed inside the wrong biome, so I quickly cut that and paste it in the correct biome to get the drops that I want. Even using storage drawers as our main storage for the ME system, our main disks are filling up fairly quick, so I use the quick and dirty method of just spam more of them in order to fix that. Have to drag out the old tried and true squeezer for the next section of breaking down mineral logs. Integrated dynamics isn't something I've really experimented much with overall, but I know that it's fairly powerful used in the right hands. I anticipate I do not have the right hands. After crystallizing the resin, we use it to craft a mechanical squeezer, and I guess we just throw our friend away. How could I? Easily, as it turns out, as I immediately get distracted crafting things using the Endercrafter, starting off with the uraninite and uranium. Adding this new gear into our slight collection of them down here underneath the base, it is one of the requirements for making the vibranium ingots. The other of which is nether stars. I know, what a jump, right? Going to the Wither, I was woefully unprepared and have to leave. For some reason, I seem to recall that the bow from Mechanism was far stronger than it is. At least I got my model frameworks ready. After retreating back to base, I make sure and set up a cage of witherproof blocks holding in the Knowing that I can, in fact, slowly chip it down into oblivion, I decide to take the extremely elongated fight to get the first star, and then reset up a cage that can hold the Wither properly the next time. Alright, we finally have a set-up cage with the Wither trapped inside. Now it must suffer the fate of the poor lesser demon in the Wizard's Tower. Stay there and die. After killing the Wither a few more times in order to train the model frameworks, I then set up a very small area dedicated to powering the simulation chambers. With all of that properly set up, we get our first Wither predictions, which we will fairly promptly turn into nether stars. Because, as mentioned, they are necessary for the crystal ingots. I made an auto elite crafting table. I could not determine how to make it go. I may be stupid. I accept this. But this does lead us to the very important breaking off point of this series, where I was looking through the crystal ingots and discovered for the first time what the recipe for the star is. Allow me to elaborate for you. For the coveted Aldemod star, we need some blocks of very high tier metals, 19, 9, and 9 respectively. Putting those aside, we also need a collection of singularities, requiring 25,000 of their respective items, as well as an ultimate singularity combining all of them. There are 7 additional items made by the Aldemod's team. Of note for us currently is the pulsating black hole, requiring 59,000 blocks of wood, dirt, obsidian, gravel, sand, 531,000 iron, gold, and redstone, and then 4.8 million cobblestone. And the improbable probability device. The only real concern about this item is the antimatter, which has its own complicated and long processing chain. We will get to that when we tackle Mechanism, but for now, these two are the biggest threats to completing our mission. Unless I missed some important part of a recipe, but I don't have any type of history of doing that. With that slight bit of panic out of the way, I decided it would be a good time to check what day it is. It is day 46, and I'm looking at the star for the first time. Why am I like this? On to more sensible and productive manners, I throw some crappy enchants onto some armor so that we can upgrade our Apotheosis world tier. This allows access to the gateway of the first frontier. I figure, place it down in the mob spawner. What could go wrong? Oh, well, that's okay. I can just fly up and leave. No big deal. I didn't feel like doing that either. Fair enough. Back in the overworld with my gear, I set a new portal down, this time with the goal of killing everything in it. The waves themselves proved not to be really anything difficult, other than some slight annoyance with the strays slowing. We use the materials from the Gateway of the First Frontier to repeat the enchantments on our gear and upgrade our tier once again to Ascent. The gem drops from all of these gateways allow us to make the Diamond, Netherite, Allomodium, and Vibranium upgrades. I never actually bother with the Unobtainium one. Going through the upgrade process of all of these nets us a Vibranium pickaxe, which we will need to mine the Unobtainium in the end after fighting the dragon. Speaking of the end, we will need eggs in order to craft the cake to get there, so I head over and purchase some chicken eggs. I craft a crossbow and backpack as well as other miscellaneous gear and prepare to go to the end. Or the nether. No, at the end. For some reason, my entire end is dotted with red X's on every block, even with the light overlay on and off. It's very odd. Make sure that we grab our model frameworks for the dragon. Quickly go through 2 very tedious and boring kills, as the dragon usually is in modded Minecraft. Grab the heart as well as the egg from both. After fighting the dragon, I take one of the portals and then fly around till I find an end island. This is where the final ore for the star is Unobtainium. I managed to find a couple on the bottom of this cliffside, which I plan on using to make Unobtainium side potions, as the questbook recommends. But those don't exist. Cool. Replacing 2 of the wither models for dragon models in the simulation chambers in order to maintain an even supply of both. I then move on to upgrade the meshes for netherite meshes. These will give us some extra resources from endstone, including skulk, which we will end up needing for the star. Putting down a couple of infusing factories with constant exports of diamond and redstone and coal to ensure that we have sources of the enriched diamond available, we begin our mechanism processing line with export buffers on each, which naturally means we will immediately need more power to make up the difference. This large black overcompensation cable for channel abuse is going to host the rest of the mechanism line for part 2 of the processing. This will net us the materials required for nuclear fission, as well as the resultant crafting from plutonium and polonium. Each of these first factories will be responsible for infusing various items, creating alloys, and steel. And now the proper fissile line begins, first with an enriching factory to make yellow cake uranium. This is followed up by a chemical oxidizer to make uranium oxide, a chemical infuser, which we'll come back to as it is the final step, an electrolytic separator for hydrogen and oxygen, which I have made 2 dynamic tanks to hold extra supply of in the background, another infuser and condensator, yet another infuser, and a dissolution chamber. Of course, as with all mechanism, it is very energy hungry, so I spam. While spamming all of this out, I have the brilliant idea of why not just make an infinite lava cell, which I can export infinitely. Shocker. The blazing crystal blocks are simple enough, and I clearly overlook the 256 M disk that is required, because it is far, far worse. But we are going to end up needing blaze rods anyway, so small detour. While doing all that, the mech line has produced its first uranium X fluoride. But surprise, we immediately jump into power instead, making energized steel to upgrade our starting lasers. ADHD our way back to isotopic centrifuges from mechanism. Discover far too late that the recipe for time in a bottle hasn't been nerfed like it normally is. I missed a lot of time in this thing. After a quick base reconstruction, we are ready to place down the isotopic centrifuges. Using the uranium hexafluoride from before, we will use them to centrifuge into fissile fuel. The next multi-block that we need, the fission reactor, is quite a bit bigger than anything else we've made so far, and it is going to require more room, which I do remember to light up this time at least. The actual mechanics of this towering monolith are quite simple for our purposes. We throw in water and fissile fuel and get nuclear waste. That's basically it. You do technically have to make sure it doesn't overheat, but spam water is the solution. With it producing the first nuclear waste, we added into the solar neutron activator to make our first tiny bit of polonium. After that, we spam sinks. Sinks are the future of nuclear power. Some part of me feels like this doesn't translate real well into actual use cases. Weird. Using the polonium that we've gathered thus far, with some fluorine dust, nets us polonium candy. Pellets. Probably shouldn't eat the radioactive material. Probably. Oh hey, it comes in different flavors too. Plutonium. Sounds good. I will need a bunch more materials fairly soon, it appears, so quadruple line of stuff, go! Now we head back to power, where we craft new materials to upgrade our lasers, to craft new materials, to upgrade our lasers, to craft new materials, to upgrade our lasers, to craft new materials, to upgrade our lasers. Oh look, the candies are ready! To upgrade our lasers, to craft new materials, 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 to upgrade our lasers, new materials, to upgrade our lasers, to craft 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 new materials. Yay, progression. After what seems like an eternity, I finally craft an entropy manipulator to make ice out of my tiny pool of water. Throw on a tiny silk touch book onto a pickaxe, and make the seeds. There is one tiny additional little line for mechanism making HDPE sheets, but this is made by smashing up some potatoes and adding some oxygen, so nothing really complicated. After all of this, I check and see day 64. Not too bad overall. I begin the first of the nitro crystal crafting that will take place as I use it to make reactors with. This is what I wanted the ice for earlier on, in order to generate far more power in a far more compact space. Keeping it stocked up with materials is very important, as we will soon need the power for the supercritical phase shifter, the final step in the mechanism production line for antimatter. Hey, watching this building is kind of boring. Can we skip? Oh, we can, cool. The basics of the SPS are as follows. Input an unbelievable amount of polonium and power, and you get a tiny amount of antimatter. 1 bucket per 1,000th of a bucket of antimatter. It's going to take a long time for these to process, but thankfully, now that it is set up, it is all automatic and can run in the background. Unlike this 256 mega component, which I don't have the things for. Now that my biggest worry of antimatter is out of the way and passived, I look towards the other ones that I determined would be difficult, the pulsating black hole being the main culprit. So it is time to throw up a few farms with seeds of the smaller materials like dirt and trees, and that will also passive that part. I figure a fairly long trail of cobblestone generators will solve any cobblestone problems. Since both vibranium as well as the star and singularities require a large chunk of materials, I throw down a bunch of gears down in the basement. I guess that you can call them the meatballs to the spaghetti. Where am I even go? I guess to this. It is ATM to the sky. I didn't think that's exactly what they meant. Oh, I'm just spamming out a whole bunch of crafting, as well as downloading more RAM. While I did plan on auto-crafting all of this, tossing the cobble into a compression chest is way faster. Ooh, look, new carrots. Through a misclick, I learned that you can put more than one obsidian generator upgrade into a drawer, so that problem is also sorted. Quickly making the remaining patterns that are required for the Nexium emitter, starting with the player transmitter Nitro. Looking at the speed that the antimatter is going, I determined we're going to need a couple more Nitro reactors, so let's have them build themselves. I only really left this in because it's cool watching them. Turns out I made way too many cobble generators because the 7x one, requiring the 4.8 million blocks, is already done. I guess I'd rather struggle from success because look at the remaining options that are required. Sieving in stone for the first time gives us all types of deep, dark, and in related drops, including skulk, echo shards, and draconium dust. I do let the last few dirt autocraft to get that lovely little notification of dirt 5x is done, as well as the nether star generators. Which, looking at the requirements, means I need to start industrial foregoing. And there's only one real way to do that. A whole bunch of latex. Whee! All of this dubiously sourced latex from random logs placed on top of them will make our first plastic sheets, which is the basis of all of the higher tier machine blocks in industrial foregoing. In order to actually use them, though, they do require some dissolution. Oh god, he's going to the sky again, isn't he? Yeah, it's not, you don't have to, the whole mod pack doesn't require, oh, it's more or less, alright. Ah yes, but this time it's different. The tank is dynamic. We're using our mob form to get the prerequisite pink slime for further upgrades. Just look at the cute little TTS. It's making a singularity for cross-dimensional access. I am tired of my inventory constantly being full, so I am hoping that the block breaker from industrial foregoing does not throw them all to the ground, and hey look, it does not. With the singularities, we're able to set up a quantum ring both in our base and in the nether, linking them together to allow access from wherever. This allows auto-crafting of the machine frames and advanced machine frames from industrial foregoing. Moving on to a stasis chamber, which we will use to house our wither to begin extracting ether gas from by drilling into its head. After a quick test of the stasis chamber to ensure that it holds things in place. Using past experience and mess-ups here to build a better cage, the wither is held in place, allowing us to set up drills, as mentioned, directly into its head for ether gas, which I add to the storage system. A brief wait later, and our wither builder is able to be crafted. For the rest of the components and the roses, I will need some drops from most of the normal small mobs, including slimes, creepers, and skeletons. Naturally, when using the items that we've gathered over time, we end up being exactly one rose short. Well, there's a way to force mobs to spawn by using seeds and some unconventional methods thanks to mystical agriculture. Jamming a bunch of gunpowder into some jars, throwing that into some seeds, and then putting that essence into an additional machine allows us to spawn in mobs of whatever kind we like as long as we have their drops. After patiently waiting for the creeper seeds, I throw them into the solium spawner around day 70. This will spawn us a creeper, create the data model, and spawn a few more to finish that up. With everything required, we craft up our rose bushes, realize they don't stack, and then immediately have to make crystals. What? Ah, right, the player detector. This was a small laser-filled detour away from quickly progressing. But we are able to craft up the empower and the display stands in order to empower the items that we need. But it's not turning on. Oh, well, of course. You need power. How could I forget power? Now let me just head around and look at it and, Oh, I can't count. Even better than no power. Ah, lasers. With that tiny headache out of the way, we have our empowered diamantine blocks. Get a couple more recipes done for future proofing, but have everything we need for Wither's Compass. The first item out of 7, 70 something days in. Something doesn't seem very good about that math. Everyone's favorite water wheel spam is here for create, as well as a tiny little gear ratio to make sure this little bit that I'm doing with the mod is as fast as possible. Oh hey look, it's everything I'm doing with the mod. The entirety of it that I need is one precision mechanism to make the mechanical arm. One item. Worth it. Speed running through mechanism, rearing its ugly head once again, we need lithium for the gravitation engine. So, a couple of large tanks put together to make lithium out of hot water seems legit to me. Quick math indicates that I will need approximately a lot more iron, so 56 gears should do. Oh, what a nice surprise, some antimatter. Now we just need one more. Oh, I guess we're done. That is certainly a nice relief, so in celebration, I spam out a huge area to add gears to with growth accelerators and block breakers. Naturally, having them all linked up to the drawer system, I make sure and lock it before I put it. in. Something chicken jockey. Am I hip with the kids yet? I haven't seen the movie. I don't know. Gold and redstone are up next for automation, so I decide to take a detour and make a bunch more sieves. The relatively small amount of unobtainium should be quick to gather with a fortune pickaxe. We'll just use the destruction gadget to annihilate the end island. I mean, who really needs FPS anyway? Since unobtainium ores can't be destroyed by non-pickaxe methods, this does leave them as the only remaining items from this sea of endstone. Using our pick, we get through about a stack and a half of unobtainium. Obsidian is next on the list to be compacted down, as we smash up all the unobtainium into dust and smelt it down into ores, ingots, blocks, whatever you want to call them. It's done. We also finish up the gravitational modulating unit, leaving only a singularity and superconductor left otherwise. Oh hey look, the singularity's done. Leaving only a superconductor. It's time to speedrun Oratech. By building it in the most janky way possible. To be perfectly fair, I've never really delved deep into Oratech. All I really know are cores go burr and the machines look really cool. Realistically though, that is enough to get us started with some energite and adamant. We quickly expand out the platform with the necessary machines, including an assembler and a centrifuge, to which I then add multiple centrifuges because you need more than one of them as they have different uses. After crafting up a fluid add-on, we are able to make the polymers a precursor to plastic. The plastic immediately then gets used to make some processing units, which are used to make flux gates. Centrifuging out some ender dust gets us the last requirement for the large energy storage. Get slightly sidetracked with some gas seeds in order to make the flight module, which you can use a macro for to save multiple gas lives. I'm sure you care about those greatly. The superconductors finish up shortly thereafter, which earns us the Nexium emitter. Using the auto-crafting plan to determine exactly how much I still need, I look through the items that are missing and note that it's pretty much only the singularities and large chunks of items, so let's get working on expanding that. Of note, this is the night of day 81, so that does leave us with only 19 days to complete this task. It's gonna be close. After a brief dabble around with the quantum compressor, I see how to put a bunch of items in, and put the catalyst in the right spot, allowing the recipe to actually craft into our first singularity, the redstone one. Still seeing the vast quantities of items that are required for the remainder of the star, it is time, once again, to make the factory grow. Gold, copper, iron, redstone, something, avatar. Quickly throwing a stack of all the materials into the ender crafter, we'll have the full stack of vibranium over time, which is enough to finish out that part. Steel clearly needs some help, so we expand that process with more crusher support for all of the bronze and invar that we will need. All of this extra setup was 3 more days in addition to our day 81. Not too bad of a time investment to ultimately set up all of the automation needed. I find that there is a honeycomb quest reward, and finally, 700 years later, find the bee spawn egg. I leave them to their own devices so that I can get enough honey for the honey seeds. This allows me time to get some energetic alloy ingots as well as vibrant alloy ingots. We'll need these in order to craft a couple of the Ender IO requirements for the star. Some dire things upgrades as well coming in. Upgrading a bunch of netherite as well as coal into a new form of coal, into another new form of coal, into another new form of coal. Coal. With all of the coals done, we make our Eclipse Ember block, as well as finally upgrading all of our Inferium to the final tier, Insanium, making the Master Infusion Crystal, and remembering that I can use blocks for the upgrade quickly. This nets the 18 Insanium for the coal block required. The singularities also crafting up in the background. As things are going, I make sure to keep an eye on them, make sure nothing gets hung up. I make sure to swap the compressor over to iron now, as I check on the bees and discover enough materials for the honey seeds. With these, I can more easily make honey treats as well as everything bee related. A nice change of pace. Knowing that I will at least need the draconic bee, I make an obsidian nest and we'll take it to the end shortly. In the meantime, more redstone. After very patiently waiting, ignore the 256 times multiplier on the draconic bee nest, I get them all in my base, where they're a little upset. I will let them calm down while I make an unobtainium furnace. And it's back to my favorite mechanic, this time enchanting, canola seeds? What even is this mod? The bees are still a little upset, so I default to the better solution, bribery. The bees are happy. They go over to the egg. They have the particles of the egg. Why no make comb? Either way, I can't deal with that now. It's day 89 and I still have, let me look at my notes. Oh yes, a lot of things left to do. Thankfully, all of the gold and redstone have been stacking up quite nicely and those blocks are almost complete. Out of desperation, I decided to try putting the bees in the end instead, thinking maybe their natural habitat will be nicer to them. Why are they still ignoring the hive? Great. I learned at this point that getting B-roll and using the wrench down at the bottom can stay on between worlds, so you can see I delete the extra item and move on to Draconic Evolution Infusion. This is honestly one of the first few times I've actually played with this mod, so I really don't know how long everything takes. I'm just hoping that I have enough time left and that it won't cause problems. A quick Enderman setup, check on the bees. Oh hey look, they still haven't done anything. But with all of the materials acquired, I begin crafting up Wyvern Infusion to upgrade the infusion so that we can get higher tier. This sounds a lot like Powa now that I think about it. Thanks to all of the passive lines that have been set up, we finally have all the requirements for the ultimate singularity, which I throw in a barrel because I do not want to deal with trying to get these auto-crafting super tables to auto-craft. I will do it myself. And there it is. Reviewing the recipe for the star, a bit of iron, gold, some vibranium to throw in the stash, a couple things from some magic mods. Just about done. After upgrading to the Wyvern tier, we begin our first craft of Awakened Draconium to get to the Draconic tier. I definitely didn't have all the infusers in the wrong place and shake my head at it, no. Some last minute miscellaneous Ender IO crafting before I realize that I need both a witch or two as well as some drops from spawn mobs like skeleton skulls. Yes, I definitely realize now that I could have gotten those from hostile neural networks, but why do that when you can make the worst mob farm in history, able to be pulled apart by the Endermen that spawn in it? This also caused the first witch vial that I got to be destroyed by a creeper that spawned. I did at least need this area, I suppose, for a zombie head, so it wasn't all a total waste of time. That zombie head gets used to make a Z-Logic controller, which is required for the soul binder to bind the witch soul to the Ender Resonator. This all really just sounds like made-up nonsense, and I guess that's because it really is. I forget that levels are required for the soul binder, so I pump those in fairly quickly afterwards, and then patiently wait. Definitely don't use the time in a bottle. Nope, you can wait. After finishing up the vibranium blocks, the next check that I make is the day, which 92. It looks like the next biggest problem is going to be the Dragon Soul, which most of the components are from Draconic Evolution, so I decided to focus on that while letting the other last few processes go on in the background. Given how limited my time is, and I know that I at least need to fight the Chaos Guardian, I opt for a bow first, before continuing the final steps required in Auratech, the last components of the Atomic Forge. After crafting that, I head down to the Auratech OSHA-compliant Cable of Death and make the really cool block animation play out. I then spend an embarrassingly long time trying to attach cables to the Atomic Forge. Thankfully, my big troubleshooting brain hops in and is like, this seems wrong. Do you ever just not read the tooltips? I know that I always do, but for other people. So Derek lasers. After a tiny bit of troubleshooting, getting them set up and targeting, I solved that, and then, looky there. With our new Atomic Forge actually powered, I make some silicon wafers, some advanced computation engines, leading to super AI chips, some questionably sourced plutonium, and all of this culminates with Heisenberg's compensator, which we use to make a 5x gold block. Whoa, that doesn't seem right. But it's time for some time crystals anyway. Get it? Time for time crystal. It's a play on the word time, and I repeated time crystal. You just wouldn't understand. For some reason, you have to put these in cardboard boxes and traverse them through the dimensions, and that nets you a whopping 2 time crystals. I'll be honest, this mechanic kind of sucks. At least with those 2 crystals, I can make the time fluid that I will need before I then spam time crystals. The solution to everything, I suppose. With all of these new crystals set up and absorbing the time in the end, I guess? I don't really understand. I am able to get enough of the crystals to finish up what I need, the Oblivion Shard. The next step in this process is to delve into the magic mods briefly, Ars Nouveau and Occultism. First off, I will need some archwood and or any other type of the trees, some imbuement chambers to get some source gems from amethyst. Definitely very patient with that one too. Using those to make some source blocks and the ritual brazier. Some Wilden tablets in order to get the reagents for the boss. I figure it'll be a good idea to set it up in my mob farm. Unfortunately, I forgot that the mob slaughter factory would eat all the drops, but that's okay. It's not like I need them to summon the boss. Speaking of the boss, I guess they felt the need for some anti-cheese mechanics because, yep, it destroyed my whole mob farm. For penance, I decided to smack it with a pickaxe for an entire minute. I mean, I killed it with magic, because it's a magic mod boss. Look at me casting spells at it. Aren't I a great wizard, and not just a generic Steve clone? With the Wilden Tribune in hand, and drops from the other 3 Wilden creatures, I then imbue a source gem block and receive the focus of summoning that we need for the star. From this point, all we need are items from 3 mods, the Draconic Evolution items, the Empty Soul Gem from Occultism, which will be the next target, and then I need to convince my bees to be nice to me. Harkening back to the beginning, I have quite possibly the worst luck getting the very common Demon's Dream seeds. I don't think I've ever struggled to get this item in, like, modded Minecraft history. Thankfully, during that time, I have an epiphany as I remember that simulation upgrades exist, and I do in fact have all the requirements for them. I don't know why I made 3, I guess just out of panic, but with the offering slab ready, BBs are nice to me. With some coercion from skipping time. This doesn't have the first draconic dust that we need. And then I proceed to burn all of the fruit that I gathered. I guess that's okay. I had enough to make the other stone, special saplings, and fancy diamonds. With sacrificial bowls in hand, I head out to make a small platform to conduct my rituals on. In order to do that, I will need chalk, which also requires the eating of the acid trip inducing fruit to break special trees in the spirit world. Of course. With my Crayola masterpiece done and a few ritual candles to set the mood, I throw a book on the altar and make a demon that is super slow at crushing. Wow, is Bring Your Vine really slow at crushing? With the donated crushed stone that he gives, I upgrade my altar to a different ritual type. This should be enough to make the next tier of chalk, I thought, but I made the wrong kind. I didn't need this kind. This was all a waste of time. Do you ever feel like your own worst enemy? Because I do. Well, now that I've completed that, I got my green chalk. It's time to draw the next one, which requires green lime chalk. Yeah, that's why that doesn't look right. Yeah, you do need a bunch of stuff for that one. Uh-huh. Yeah, keep on looking at the recipes and be sad about it. At least I am able to find a quick way to make the bottles of enchanting to craft this recipe and ritual fairly quickly. I also forgot to light up the island. Oops. Now with that complete and lime chalk in hand, I complete the ritual. Oh, I don't have the skeleton skulls. Well, at least I have this god-awful mob farm to place a fan in correctly. Oh, whoops. Okay, to place a fan. Oh, alright. That's okay. That's what this thing's for, right? We're just gonna sit over here. Oh, I almost got devoured. Thankfully, this gives me pause enough to check my inventory and see that I have more than enough skeleton skulls. Upon placing all the skulls down, I noticed that I did the same mistake twice and did not get the correct color dye again after killing my crusher, so I have to do that ritual again for the slow crusher. Thank you, Ned, whatever your name was, for your service. And with that nightmare out of the way, the final ritual makes its way to completion for the Soul Gem. With the upcoming Chaos Guardian fight, I make one too many brewing stands in order to make some potions for the Draconic and Wyvern upgrades to the bow. It looks like most of the Draconic dust is ready, so everything is looking good. We're just a few items away. Surely we're... Oh, it's day 99. Oh. Speedrun time! So I quickly continue on, make up the rest of the upgrades for the bow, charge it up with Infinity, install the modules into the bow, realize, oh, this kinda sucks. Make a potion brewer, thinking it will speed up my potion speed. It doesn't, because I spend probably 30 minutes almost figuring out exactly how it works before I give up and ultimately just make all the potions by hand instead. Some portion of that I must take responsibility for, of course, because I don't even notice that it requires power until, yep, this point. When I finally get it powered, all I can make with it is water bottles, though. I think that I might be dumb. But by hand works. After struggling to gather potions, I then make the armor that I have the excess materials for. I guess, speaking of, I should probably add in the little dopamine hits for all of the items that were completed in the meantime. Quickly gather up some good food for the fight before moving on very quickly to the end, having to fly to 10,000 blocks away. Unfortunately, during this time I check and see that I am in fact at the end of day 100 on the way. If I'm able to kill the boss very quickly, then that will be enough in order to get the Chaos Shard and make the star. But alas, I die and then chain die along the rest of the fight, losing basically where my grave is. And at that point, that's all. So close to the star. So many items complete. Only missing the items from one mod, Draconic Evolution, only requiring the Chaos Guardian's death to craft all of them. I suppose that ultimately that means I did in fact fail the challenge. I cannot beat all the mods 10 to the sky blind in 100 days. But honestly, that's okay. It's alright to fail in life. Sometimes things just aren't going to go your way. And you gotta kind of fight through that. But it doesn't mean, however, that we're just gonna give up and let that slide. Without the time pressures of 100 days, I set up a quick passive automation of draconium and flowers, and then go to sleep, coming back to an astounding amount of both essence and nuggets. I set to work upgrading the gear, getting the draconic bow and its respective upgrades. setting up another Apotheosis gateway in order to get some God-forged pearls to upgrade both my armor as well as my bow. Pearls in hand, we upgrade the gear to at least epic and make sure to slot in some extra gems where available before grabbing the final upgrades of the bow and beginning the rematch. If the fight looks like an absolute cluster, that is because it is sped up to almost 20 times speed. This took an unbelievable amount of time, almost 40 minutes by itself. It would have been impossible for me to have done this within the 1 day allotted at the end of the challenge, unfortunately. I guess I didn't fully plan out or know the extent of how annoying this fight is. I even have to take the time here to teleport back to my base and make an Automatium axe with a quick enchantment to deal extra damage to foes around, to deal with the spam of endless withers. They don't really do damage to the player with the gear that you need to fight the dragon, so it is just a time waste, especially when you get unlucky and the dragon decides to spam spawn withers over and over and over. After even stopping briefly once again because I ran out of food due to the length of the fight, I decided to try cheesing the withers with imprisonment tools, which actually does work. It's just unfortunate that they're not stackable, and it would just result in me teleporting back and forth over and over again. I decide it's not worth it in the end, and just do the fight the slow, tedious way, until the dragon finally falls. I do make sure to hide behind the pillar just in case there's some post-death explosion of some variety, but it's just a few bolts of lightning. Kind of anticlimactic given the state of affairs of the dragon itself. Descending into the obsidian-encased cavern below the fight, I mine the Chaos Shard, the final item required since the start of this Chaos Guardian affair. With it, I do the last loop of the Draconic Evolution crafting upgrading. I decided to make the bee egg because I did not believe I had enough to make the remaining items. That was wrong. You could make the bee egg and the remaining items just from one kill. So, with that in mind, I was approximately 40-ish minutes off 2 days if I had pushed through. That's not too bad considering it was blind and I didn't really know what I was getting into. Not even looking at the recipe until 50-something days in. With the last few items wrapped up, I decided to get a tiny bit of revenge on the things that have been filling up my inventory for the past 70 days. I ruthlessly take down the Geors that I placed by hand eons ago because they were annoying. That tiny busy work out of the way, I had to finish up the craft of the ATM star. It is a celebratory moment, of course, but still a little bittersweet considering how close I actually was to completing the challenge I set out for myself. There is one bit of unfinished business, though. My plan, a long time before, of making the Infinity Lava Cell is now complete, and I can set up my large power network of magmatic generators to my heart's content. Is there a point to this? Not at all. I don't plan on playing anymore. Is it nice? Yeah, it's satisfying. And ultimately, that's why we play video games. To generate power in Minecraft. That tracks, yeah. I decided to take one last little observation of the spaghetti mess that I have made. Making sure to include Jeff over here very briefly, but don't worry about him. I had a good time. I hope you did too. If you stuck around this long, thank you. Hopefully you'll subscribe, and do the other YouTube algorithm things too. There may be more things coming soon. Until then, goodbye.